use my microphone because I'm going to keep my mask on. I'm part the way there vexed, but want to be precautious with you. I know Bruce is across the finish line on that. So, hi, I know I've seen a lot of you before, and I'm absolutely honored and just delighted that we're being joined today by Bruce Baumgartner. Bruce is a member of the Hall of Fame for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. He is a 4-time Olympic medalist, 2 gold, a silver, and bronze. We are fellow teammates from the '84 team, and between, I think, World Championships and Olympic Games, has 13 titles. In total.
13 medals.
13 medals.
World medals. I wish they were all gold, but I goofed up a few times.
Oh, well, we're so excited to have you here. Bruce is in town. He's also president of the USA Wrestling, so he is in town with the duties for that role, but has graciously decided to join us today for our member event. So we're going to make it really casual. Bruce is, he does lots of public speaking, and I want him to share the stories that really can resonate with you guys. But we'll just ask some questions. We'll definitely take questions from you all as well. But my first one is, what is it with brothers in wrestling? You got into wrestling by way of your brother, but if you look at both domestically and internationally, we see a lot of brothers who get into the sport and have success. So maybe share a little bit about how you found wrestling with your brother. And
yeah, just a little history on myself. I started wrestling in high school. I didn't start like some of the kids today. USA Wrestling provides unbelievably good programs for youth wrestlers, even pre-junior high, age and up. Well, I started in high school, and my brother was 3 years older than I was, my brother Bob, and he'd come home as a freshman, and he'd be showing me moves in the living room and showing me the different, moves. I was 3 years younger than him, and I just kind of liked it. And he really beat the tar out of me. We got in trouble. My mom had this pitcher and vase thing that she really loved. I don't know where she got it, but it didn't last very long. I think I was grounded like for 1977 for half the year for that, but. We literally, as he got older, I started going to practice a little bit. So his junior year, I remember, he was showing me stuff in the living room, and I'd go to practice, and he kind of threw me, and we hit the couch. And literally, it was like a cartoon, because the legs off the couch just kind of busted and went down. And, my dad was a bus mechanic. My mom was a secretary, so we didn't have a ton of money to go get a new couch. We had that couch for quite a while. It was just on the ground, so our couch was about that much lower. But I just really liked it, and my brother was the best athlete in the family. He played baseball. He was a starter on the high school football team. He was the captain of the wrestling team. My senior year his senior year when I was a freshman. I just liked wrestling for some reason, and I really got beat up pretty good by my brother during that time frame. I did get a varsity letter as a freshman. I was 3-3 varsity. I picked up 3 forfeits for the team, and for those of you in you probably know the athletics. I mean, I went out. They didn't have a heavyweight or a 188-pounder. That's what my brother was. So I picked up the forfeit. The 3 I wrestled, I lost. But it still got me a varsity letter, so I was pretty happy. I was 3-3 varsity as a freshman. I was pretty good JV. I didn't stink JV, but grew after that. Quick brother story, and he graduated, moved on. I became a pretty good wrestler in high school. Never won a high school state championship, though. I mean, most of the people on the Olympic teams probably have won countless high school wrestling championships. I never won high school wrestling championships. And all those years that my brother kind of beat me up, in college, he got his master's degree at Indiana State, and he was a physical therapist, and he wanted to become an athletic trainer. He got his master's degree, and I got the opportunity to work out with him a little bit. And by that time, I was like an inch or two taller, maybe 40 pounds heavier, and becoming a pretty good wrestler. And paybacks are fun. That's all I'll say. Paybacks are fun. I think that two holidays, my brother and I came home from college, and I think he had stitches in both of them. But to this day, and one of my weaknesses as a wrestler he had a great fireman's carry, and he'd always, when we practiced, at least once every couple of weeks, he'd hit me with his fireman's carry, even, when I was an All-American at college already. So, I mean, that's how we I just started liking it. I mean, it was I didn't start when I was a peewee or anything like that. I mean, I started in high school.
But you also did track too. You discus and shot put.
Yeah, I did the disc
there as well.
I did the discus and shot put. In fact, I was actually better in shot put than I was. I was 2-time third in the state for the smaller divisions in New Jersey for the shot put. I still hold all these years later the record at my high school. It was a very small high school, not a great record, but it's still a record. You got to be proud. But the only reason why I went out for track is my English teacher, Mr. O'Neill, was the track coach. And I made a deal with him. I said, listen, if you, back in that day, you couldn't, your high school wrestling coaches could not be involved in any wrestling clubs at all in New Jersey. So I could not participate in wrestling with my high school wrestling coach. So I said to the track coach, if you run the wrestling club, I will play track or participate in track. So we made the deal. I'd go up in the little bit, we'd pull out 2 mats in the gym, and I'd find a couple of wrestlers in high school to wrestle with, and I'd go down and throw a shot. I did take it pretty seriously, because my feeling was if I was going to do it, I was going to do my best. And I did okay. I mean, I again, third in the state twice. Wrestling, I was only third in the state once. So it was an enjoyable experience. I firmly believe multiple sports is a great thing for athletes up maybe till their senior year in high school. Maybe you concentrate one way or another. But, multiple sports, you develop a lot of different athleticism, and you develop as an athlete, not just as a wrestler. And I think it helped me out.
Yeah, you're seeing more and more coaches say, those who develop athletes, that multi-sport athlete is really going to be better, benefited in the long run. So besides your brother, who else or what other influences did you have in your life to sort of chart that path to Olympic wrestling?
Well, the biggest influence in my life was my parents and my brother, my family, my mom and dad and my brother. My dad never played any athletics in his life. My mother was a great sports fan. I grew up in New Jersey, so she was a Mets fan, a Jets fan, and I believe it was a Rangers fan in hockey. That was her 3 big sports. And, we watched them all the time. And I really wasn't that interested growing up, but she always had one of those teams on. So she was a big fan. My dad really never watched me wrestle a whole lot in high school. He dropped my mother off, and my mother'd go to the match, and then when I wrestled, and my brother did this, when my brothers wrestled also in high school, she'd go out in the hallway and more or less listen to it because she couldn't see her little, even though my brother was 188 pounds, and at the end I was like 240 pounds in high school, she couldn't see her little babies getting beat up. And the fact of it was, most of the time her little babies were doing the beating, but she couldn't watch. So, my dad and mom instilled, the basic and brother, the basic moral ethic of fabric, the work ethic, the right from wrong that I believe I still guide by today. And I've had unbelievably numerous coaches from guys like Bobby Douglas and Dan Gable and Greg Strobel, Bill Wick, Joe C. My high school coach, my college coach, high school coach was Joe Fork, college coach was Fran McCann. A little, if you follow wrestling, Sarah Hildebrand and myself were coached by the same coach. My college
just
coach
made the Olympic team
that just made the Olympic team. My college coach was her club assistant coach in high school. So. He retired from coaching college and just worked in his community. So there's so many coaches a guy named Dave Schultz helped me, develop my skills. And I thought what I felt I was good at is taking and watching the coach and doing their technique and getting their good things that they teach and profess and absorbing the good. And in my mind, the bad things that they showed and professed, I was pretty good at eliminating. So, I felt, although I did and won the medals and so forth, it was not just myself. I mean, it was an awful lot of people. I met my wife, Linda, in college, and actually, I think it's probably true that all of my success came from after I met her. I met her in 80. I can tell you that January 24th, 1980 was our first date. I was second in the NCAA championships that year, second the following year, and I was blessed she was able to come to all the Olympics. Did not make all of our world championships though, but was all the Olympics. So when you ask how I became who I am, I think it's a conglomeration of many great people helping me. When I was on the medal stand, it was never just me. It was a lot of other people that helped me get there.
The village,
Mm-hmm.
village for sure. And so obviously coaching, and your coaches had great influence on you. And then so at the beginning of your journey, basically with, going to the games in '84, you also took on a role as a coach.
Right.
As an assistant coach. And so how was that to juggle and, what did you learn from kind of your experiences of being a coach as well as an athlete that helped, I guess, both of those paths?
So I don't know how much you follow Bruce Baumgartner history. So I went to Indiana State University and graduated in 1982. And I went there, degree in industrial arts or industrial education, industrial technology. I went to Oklahoma State for 2 years as a graduate assistant to train from 82 to 84 to compete in the Olympics. And I was very fortunate to make the Olympic team and compete. I won the gold medal. It was the boycott year. I did very well coming up into that. So although we'll never know, I believe I had a really good shot at winning the gold medal. If all the countries were there, I won the Tbilisi tournament, which was a huge tournament in Soviet Georgia earlier in that year. And right before I signed on or made the Olympic team, I became the assistant wrestling coach at Edinburgh University. And over the years, I coached at Edinburgh from about 84 to about 90 as assistant head coach from about 90 to 97, and athletic director from 97 to about 2017, was development person at Indiana State University, associate vice president for a couple of years, and since retired. Enjoying retired immensely, mind you. But I learned, and I think I became a better wrestler because I was coaching, and I think I became a better coach because I was wrestling. And I think it really helped both my coaching and my wrestling to see, and I was pretty good. I won my first world championships in 1986 when I was coaching. And you had to realize not every wrestler that came to Edinburgh University was trying to be an Olympian or even a national champion. Some of them just want to have a great college experience. But I think what I learned as a wrestler, that we're all unique and different, and you have to teach all your wrestlers that you're coaching that they're all unique and different. Because if you looked at the world team, if you look at our Olympic team right now, we have 6 freestyle men, 6 freestyle women, 6 Greco-Roman men. None of them wrestle identical. Everybody has their individual attributes and individual skill sets. And that helped me when I saw that at the Olympic and world level. You had to train your kids, accordingly. And it helped, I think, when they saw, a heavyweight who sometimes, we get the bad rap of being, just big, lethargic people that don't wrestle very well. And I think watching me train over the years, watching the effort I put into it, the discipline and so forth, I think it motivated and helped the team at Edinburgh also. We had some pretty good teams, and we had some pretty bad teams over the years, but overall, I think we built a pretty good program at Edinburgh University, and again, coaching helped my wrestling success, and my wrestling success helped the coaching. Hopefully that answered your question. That was a long answer to a short question, wasn't it?
No, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting because, I'm hoping we're going to now talk a little bit about your, career, and especially the rivalry that you had with Soviet athletes, from early 80s through the, 96. But I think too, it's informative in terms of how you use both. And I was trying to think through, as we talk about your career, me being from the sport of gymnastics, and coming from that same era, we always marveled with the Soviet athletes because they had not only just this amazing technical expertise, but they had an art to them that was just beyond what we'd ever seen before. And so I got to thinking, is wrestling the same in terms of that combination of technical and artistic, approach to what you do? And maybe you could talk a little bit about, what were your strengths and weaknesses, and then how that informed you as an athlete when you came up against the Soviet athletes, and on many occasions, but most notably in the big matches and those big gold medal bouts.
That's a lot of questions right there. You might have to remind me if I miss something. First of all, wrestling's a lot of things, but I wouldn't call it artistic. We're a combat sport. It's a battle out there, and I'm proud of it. The Soviets, and I'll say the Russians to this day, have areas in their country that are still creating some of the best wrestlers in the world. They don't all stay in Russia. Some of them move out to different countries, or the former Soviet Union. But they are still I will never say USA Wrestling's anything but the best country in the world, but they are one of the best countries in the world, Russia. And back in the day when it was the Soviet Union, there was no doubt they were, the best country in the world. I mean, they had a system, they had strength. I would still argue that, where drug testing is concerned, they were spending the money on better drugs, and the United States was spending money on better drug tests. But in a lot of cases, I think they won the battle of spending the money. But they were always kind of, I'll say, the envy of the world. And when I started wrestling, it was pretty rare. The expectation was not for, in 80 and 81, 82, 83, when I first started the international, scene, that the U.S., a lot of our team members, we weren't expecting to beat the Russians or the Soviets. I think that's changed now, and with most of our wrestlers, I really believe that, our men and women's freestyle team, every one of them believe they can medal and beat the Russians, and I think they're 100% accurate on that. But it was difficult. I mean, I had rivalries with a couple of Russians. I mean, a guy named David Gobashvili comes to mind, and he won the 1988 Olympics. He won a world championships, beating me in the finals. I believe that was in 90, I believe it was, in Japan. And then I beat him in 92. In kind of what would be the semifinals, but it was really pool competition to get into the finals, 3-0. So we had some great rivalries.
You had 16 total bouts with him?
I think it was maybe more than that. Yeah. I mean, Gary Abbott could know, but I think I believe I'm
maybe
like
medal matches.
I think I'm like, I want to say 12-4. I won 12 and he won 4. Of course, he won in Olympics and World Championships. I wish I could have had those back, but you can't have redos in life. You got to be happy and move forward.
You got redemption in 92, though.
Yes, I did. But they were good, and the Russians are still very good. Did I answer all the parts of the question? Because it was long. Anybody remember anything?
Technical, not artistic, right?
Technical. It's very technical and strength. And I think you asked a little bit in there of why, what were my attributes. And although I don't think I was by any means the strongest person in the weight class, I was pretty strong. And I don't think I had the absolute best technique in the weight class, but I think I was in pretty good shape, real good shape. I don't think I was the best condition maybe in the weight class, but I was in really good shape. What I think I had over a lot of the competitors, and especially in the United States, because I had a rivalry with one guy, Tom Erickson, that I think we wrestled like 28 times, and I am 28-0 against him. Poor Tom, we have a pretty good relationship, but I'm pretty sure he still has nightmares when he talks about his Olympic experience. There were a guy named Dave Schultz, actually one time we're sitting at a table at a World Cup, and he goes, Tom, you could be the best wrestler in the world, but you just can't beat Bruce. That I didn't like Dave after that. But I think what I had is I was pretty stubborn and pretty mentally tough. I think I've made some technical errors in my wrestling and lost, but I don't think I ever really, especially once I learned how to wrestle, after college and really studied the sport, I don't think I ever really mentally caved in or mentally quit. I battled every single time, and again, made some mistakes. Wish I could have a few moves back, but you can't live in redos. You got to move forward. So you learn from your victories, learn from your mistakes, and move on. But I think that's why I was able to be as successful as long as I was. I mean, and let's face it, I wrestled in 15 Olympic and World Championships. 2 I did not place, 1982 and 1991. But I was very lucky to not be injured at the wrong times, although I had a bunch of surgeries during that time. And I was a heavyweight, so I really didn't have to go through a lot of the weight cutting, although I had a weight class limit, but I was always 5 to 8 pounds under it, so it wasn't, I was lucky injury-wise and didn't have the extra stress. But I just loved wrestling. I loved working out. Didn't really like the lifting a ton, but it was a means to an end. And probably, truth be told, I didn't like the extra conditioning, the running, the exercise, biking, and so forth. I did it and kind of enjoyed it. After competition, a side note, when I quit in 1997, I literally stopped working out for like 20 years. I just couldn't bring myself to sweat. I mean, I didn't. Sweating became repulsive. And now, by the way, after 2 new knees and a new hip, and maybe another one on the way, new hip on the way, I try to walk, bike, snowshoe, hike and stuff that I can. So back to working out. I did take a little break. 20 years.
So you mentioned retired in 97. 96, you capped your Olympic career with a bronze in Atlanta, which also you were named and in the honored position of being flag bearer for those games as well. So going into 96, did you have a plan to sort of be wrapping up your career, or?
I sort of knew, and I don't know how many people are really wrestling historians here, but a very good friend of mine who has since passed away, Jeff Blatnick, used to do the commentary on the NBC, Olympic coverage.
Jeff was an 84 gold medalist.
84 gold medalist, Greco, overcame Hodgkin's disease, unbelievably, the type of guy that he won his medal in the Olympics 4 or 5 days before I competed. He actually worked out with me to help me prepare for my match a couple days later. So if you go back to the actual coverage and I won't get into too much detail, but because I did not place in 1991, NBC Sports had me as not being very good. They didn't do any research. In fact, their research, and if you go back to the tape, and I might miss it a little bit, but as I'm winning the gold medal, Jeff Blatnick goes, some people thought he was too old. He didn't say fat, but I'll say too fat, had a wife and a child, too slow to be a Olympic champion. Well, I won pretty handedly that Olympics. I think I had 1 point scored on me. Beat the guy in the finals 8-0 or whatever, the returning Olympic champion. I said 3-0. And I actually won 2 world championships, the silver medal after that, and then the bronze in the final Olympics. To answer your question, I know I'm really circling the plane here, but to answer your question, going into the Olympics, I was starting to feel in '96 a little worn out and tired, but I did not really know if I was going to compete anymore. So I did compete in the 1997 World Cup in 1997 in April, but all those things Jeff said in '92 were probably 100% accurate in '96. I mean, I was really, I would say, struggling, and I think I wrestled more than well enough to win it. I made a mistake. I came back and avenged that loss for my 3rd place medal against Andre Shamili.
In a judge's decision, right?
Pardon me?
In a judge's decision?
Yeah, in criteria.
Yeah.
The judge's decision's like 10 down the road. I scored last point scored at the time, won the match, so it was 1-1. But I did wrestle in the World Cup in '97 just to make sure I was done. Now, put it in time frame, nobody wrestled past about 28, 30 when I started wrestling, and I was at 36 at that time. And it was really a struggle to prepare for the World Cup. It was in Stillwater, Oklahoma, so it was kind of going back home a little bit. I did win the World Cup sort of in a roundabout way based on points and criteria because up-and-coming Cuban beat me pretty bad, but because of the way it worked out, I had more good points than he did. I won the World Cup, but I knew at that point my mind and body was not going to go on for another, World Championships or another Olympics. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. But you were a flag bearer, so that was quite an honor. Maybe talk a little bit about, how you found out and.
That was, in wrestling, in the world of life, I think you have accomplishments. There's things you earn, and that's my medals and so forth. And then there's awards. That's your Hall of Fame, you're carrying the flag, and so forth. And I think that's probably the biggest award I have ever won or earned is carrying the flag. And to represent our great country, and we have a great country in Atlanta. When I went over and down the ramp, you literally couldn't hear the crowd. I mean, you couldn't hear it. So I could yell as loud as I could. You couldn't hear it. It was crazy loud, so much energy. For whatever reason, I held it out with one hand, and I did not plan to do that. If you look at the pictures, I had the flag holder thing there, and I don't know how many people here have ever children. You ever have your kids run across the floor in the house and they trip and you go, I meant to do that. And honest to goodness, I was walking around that and I'm going, if I trip, I can't say I meant to do that. I'm walking around going, all I remembered, I watched the pictures and I remember the pride of representing our country, but the nervousness of falling, dropping, just doing something stupid to disgrace our flag and our country. But it was by far as far as my wrestling career, because I have family moments with my wife and my kids, and so forth. But by far the greatest wrestling honor day of my life. I mean, and I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I don't believe the Olympics should be politicized, but I was able to spend time. Hillary Clinton, Chelsea, and Bill, when he was president, we walked around the Olympic, myself and Teresa Edwards. She read the athlete's oath. At the Olympics, I carried the flag. We were kind of captains, I think they say. But we walked the first family around the Olympic Village, and we had lunch with them, and just a great guy. Then we had a presentation to where, President Clinton gave me to carry in the opening ceremony. It was a flag that flew over the Capitol. I gave him an honorary captain's warm-up. It was just a great day. Side note, person on my high school wrestling team was on the Secret Service, and we reacquainted. He was a senior with my brother, Joe Lozano. And interesting story, I would say, is that I had to go to the restroom, and I walked into the restroom, and a Secret Service guy grabbed me by the neck and pulled me back, and I almost fell down. I mean, I thought something's wrong. Well, it turns out to be President Clinton was in the restroom, and nobody should go into the restroom. Well, President Clinton, he says, okay, let him in. So I can tell you, President Clinton does wash his hands. He was washing his hands on the way in. But I felt that, and it wasn't a big guy, and I don't, because I'm a big guy, I'm walking in like, boom, and it just stopped me, and I'm like almost falling back, and he says, oh, it's okay, you can let him in. So, but that was an unbelievably great day, and I finally made it all the way around the track and posted it, and I don't know that I was ever more relieved. I guess proud, relieved, in awe of a situation as that whole. It was an unbelievable day. I mean, it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's great. And again, with the home games too. I mean, man, I got the 80. But you had 2 home games, basically, LA
Right.
and Atlanta. But to have that honor, and I do remember that big ramp. And it was steep. It wasn't. It was a steep pitch. So
it was a steep pitch, and a lot of people like I don't want to pick on the U.S. OPC board members. We do have one here, but those folks. They actually were supposed to come out first, but because the ramp was so steep, they slowed down, and all the athletes just kind of, instead of following in order, I think like everybody wanted us to, it just turned into an up and over, and it was just unbelievable. It was really cool.
Great. So now you're president of USA Wrestling. Maybe talk a little bit about, wrestling's been through a lot in the last several years. They were a bit on the chopping block in the early, 2012, 2013, which then, they remained and kept the, position on the program with a lot of work. I know Gary was very involved with that as well. And also the fact that, we're seeing a lot like with men's gymnastics is that NC2A programs with wrestling have been dwindling. So what are those challenges that you face as president and given that spectrum, maybe what are your thoughts on that?
A lot of thoughts there. You ask a long question. I'll start, I guess, in about 2013, the International Olympic Committee came out with some, we're most likely removing wrestling from the Olympics. I think it was after 2016. A bunch of great people all over the world got together, and I'll say this, there's not many times when Iran, Russia, US, Japan all get together and do something together. So I think it really shows sports does kind of go across a lot of different normal boundaries or issues. And we were very fortunate through USA Wrestling, through the Russian Wrestling Organization, others, a lot of volunteers to really, and I think for the better. I mean, wrestling was, at that time, our leadership internationally was not great. We were becoming a very stale sport, very traditional, did not modernize, did not embrace a lot of things that we should have. And the leadership of the what at the time was FIL, our International Wrestling Federation, was basically I voted out with the new leadership. We've created better rules, better promotion, better organization. We've removed, and I mean we, the sport of wrestling, removed some of the stereotype corruption that we, and I never believed the corruption was as bad as they think it was, but, remove some of the stereotype corruption that you would hear, in an international governing body. And I really think since then that we've turned that negative into a huge positive. I think right now our sport is very healthy throughout the world. In the Olympics and the World Championships, our championships are much better attended now than they were years, before that time frame. So I think internationally things are good. I also think, and if you notice, I'm pretty cup is half full type of person, not half empty, but I really do think that wrestling in the United States, and we'll have to see how the pandemic has affected it as far as the high school, junior high, elementary wrestling goes. But, USA Wrestling's membership in 19 was maybe approaching a record number of wrestling participants. High school was on the upswing again. Colleges were growing a little bit. Now, we'll have to see how things open up in a year or two with the pandemic, because I don't know how that will look. But even so, I think, yes, we did take a downturn from the 70s till now of programs and at the college level, but I think there's about 75 or 80 college Division I wrestling programs, and there's literally hundreds of Division II and III. So I'm not sure of the gymnastics numbers, but I don't think they have an all Division I, II, and III, and we're not even counting NAIA, who has double-digit numbers. Our women's programs are growing exponentially. I should know the numbers. We'll have a report on that tomorrow, but more and more high schools are now, high school states will have men's or I guess it's girls and boys wrestling, which is awesome. It's growing. The NCAA has just named women's wrestling as an emerging sport. This year we had our second women's collegiate championships. The NAIA is, the different levels of sport. Division I, II, or Division II, NCAA Division II and NCAA Division III and NAIA has actually been growing in numbers for the sport of wrestling. So I think we're doing, reasonably well nationally as a sport. I think USA Wrestling, if you look at our women's team and our men's freestyle team, we've been good the last 3 or 4 years. Our women especially are pretty awesome.
That's great. So I'm gonna do one more question, and then I'm gonna open it up to other questions. I'm gonna make it really simple. What should we watch for in Tokyo?
I think you're going to see some great wrestling. I don't want to mention names, because if I forget somebody, Gary Abbott's taping it, I'll get a ton of crap. I just got done with the trials. We had our trials last weekend.
Right.
And, we have some newcomers in all 3 styles. We have some very experienced people. Our women's team is chock full with medalists already. Our men's teams have some good medalists. I think we're going to see, we're on the pace for an awesome performance in Tokyo. I mean, there's a lot of time. COVID could do a lot of different things. Obviously, we're not on the COVID thing, but I just really think you're going to see a great performance from Team USA Wrestling over in Tokyo. I think we're going to. I just think we're going to have a great performance. We have experience. We have youth. We have a lot of energy. I think we have quality coaches. Quality individuals.
That's great. That's awesome.
Very political answer there, wasn't it? So if I name one person, then it's why didn't I name the other 17?
Awesome, great. Well, I'd like to open it up for questions for Bruce, and Yes.
What's the difference between freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling?
Okay, we get that question a lot. So freestyle, have you ever watched a high school wrestling match?
All the time.
Okay. Freestyle wrestling is very similar, not the same, mind you, different scoring systems, some different holds, but similar to what you would watch in high school or college. You can attack the legs, you can do a single leg, a double leg, you can do trips. Greco-Roman wrestling, if you remember, are probably one of the biggest upsets in sports in 2000. Bruce Gardner beat the Russian, I guess, at the time, who had, total 13 world and Olympic medals in Greco-Roman. You can only attack from the waist up. So it's more throws or throw-bys. It's not, you can't do singles, doubles, high crotches like I did. It was all upper body holds. You couldn't trip. So that's what kind of Rulon did. Karelin, who he beat, had 12 golds and a silver. His only loss at a big match was in World Olympic competition, was Rulon. And I have 13 World Olympic medals in freestyle wrestling, so two heavyweights still to this day have the most medals. But that's essentially the difference. The women wrestle almost identical rules to the men's freestyle. Yes, sir.
Not a question, just an observation. I've been here now to several of these events, and I'm really struck by the athletes and their patriotism and how they feel representing the country, standing up on the podium, just participating in the Olympics. And I really salute you for your patriotism and your honor in carrying the flag and just being a proud American.
Thank you very much. I am a proud American, and I can say this, although over the years, and we don't know what will transpire in Tokyo, there have been some political protests or whatever, but I can say those Americans weren't anti-American. They're trying to make America better. And I think the people that I know on almost every Olympic team, it was a lifelong dream to represent our country. And I believe it's the greatest country. And we have a lot of problems, but collectively we can fix them all. Every day, my goal as President of USA Wrestling, we want to be the best NGB. We have problems, and we have to, it's how you get the right people together and fix them. But I think our Olympians, to your note, I don't know any of them don't. It's a lifelong dream for them to represent the United States of America. In my case, to be able to medal was an unbelievable honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
So along those lines, how did you feel in 1980?
I do not believe that. I believe as athletes we can make a difference in society. I do not believe the overall sport should be overly politicized. I think history's proven when we boycotted in 1980, and I was alternate the Olympic team then. I don't know if I would have been if everybody would have tried out, but I was 20 years old or 19 years old, and I was alternate to the Olympic team. I think history would prove that us boycotting in 1980 and the Soviet bloc boycotting in 1984 changed zero. They fought that war in Afghanistan it might still be fighting that same war. So I felt, although I'm proud to be an American, I think that was a ill-advised thing. We got through it. I know there's some wrestlers that had Olympians. That was their opportunity. That was their year, and they never got it back. But I also believe you look forward and you make the best of it, and hopefully we've learned from our historical, I wouldn't say mistakes, you learn from history. I hope history does not repeat itself. Yes, sir.
What's the process of being selected as a flag bearer? Like, do you campaign for it, run around, ask for people to vote for you, or just wake up one day and be like, oh, thank you for giving me this honor?
I am not what I would say very political. I did not politic for anything. What the process was in 1996 that I know of, the U.S. Olympic wrestling, each team provided one or more individuals they want to recommend. And then the captains of those teams kept voting it down till somebody won. I had the most votes. Teresa Edwards had the second most. We were captains, I think is what they call. I don't know, and you know, Gary Abbott's USA Wrestling's head of media services. I'm not sure I should know his title, right? But I don't. Sorry, Gary. I've known him 100 years, but he might know. You know, did USA Wrestling at the time possibly do some politicking? I'm not positive. Did other sports do? But I don't think there was a lot of. You know, it was based on you know, at that time I was a returning Olympic champion. I had 3 medals. There wasn't many people. I think Carl Lewis might have been the 7th person to win 4 medals in 4 different Olympics, and I think I was the 8th at the time for the U.S. You know, the number 1 guy, and if you go through the museum, one of my Olympic heroes, Al Order, won 4 golds, 4 Olympics, set the Olympic record, each one in a whole different time when it wasn't as easy to train as I had it, and I think it's easier now for the folks today. But Al is, I think, as you would say, as far as Olympians, chairman of the board. He's, you know, doesn't have as many medals as a lot of the other great Olympians, but he had 4 opportunities to win medals, 4 gold, 4 Olympic records.
So we'll do one more question, but Bruce is actually going to also be over at lunch as well, but I want to make sure we save time for Ashton and her presentation as well. So.
You touched on the role of drugs in past Olympics, and we all acknowledge it was big. It culminated with Lance Armstrong, and I think '96 was his first Olympics, but he went on to great things and then fell, and that kind of put her on the world stage. What's your opinion now of the Olympics in general? Is it pretty clean now? And I know you saw it, and a lot have done a lot, but do you think it's been solved?
I think it is much better than it used to be. I am still not positive that certain countries in the world are not spending more time and effort to develop better, maybe chemically enhanced ways to train and beat the drug testing systems. But I will say I'm proud of the American drug testing. They literally had, when I was competing, and there was different ways to do it, but you know, drug testing had changed. But I mean, we had to submit a calendar for certain parts of the year, and twice I had a guy at Sunday morning at, I think it was like 8 o'clock, knock at my house in Edinburgh going, it's time to drug test. And we'd get in his car, I'd have to get in his car, and we'd drive to the hotel. He'd give me bottled water, I'd sit around forever, I'd produce my specimen, no advance notice, no anything. You know, they just show up. So, and I'm proud of the way the U.S. has done that. I still think we do a very good job of doing that. I'm not saying it's cured, but I think, you know, the last Russian incidents over the last 3 or 4 years, and you know, some of the other doping issues, I think it's more prevalent, and I think more people in the world now are keeping an eye out for it and trying to do the right thing than ever. But I'm also not naive enough to think that there might not be a few people or countries that are trying to develop new and better things. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it's most likely still there, but I don't think at the same level as it was at one time.